Close your eyes now and let yourself drift. Drift back through time, through centuries and millennia, to a world both familiar and strange, a world of endless deserts and forgotten cities, a world called Kenshi. Tonight, we journey together through the mists of ancient history, to a time before the wastes, before the ruins, before the world became what it is today. We will walk slowly, peacefully, through the story of beings who have witnessed it all, the skeletons. Let your breathing slow, in and out, as we begin our tale in the gentlest way possible. There is no rush. We have all the time in the world. Long, long ago, so long that even the rocks have forgotten, there existed what some called the first empire. Imagine, if you will, a world of gleaming towers reaching towards endless skies, cities of white stone and shimmering metal, when knowledge flowed like water and technology bloomed like flowers in springtime. The humans of this age were builders, dreamers, creators of wonders. They looked at the world and asked not what it was, but what it could become. And in their greatest workshops, in their most secret laboratories, they asked a question that would echo through all of time. Could they create life itself? Not biological life, born of flesh and blood, but something else, something that would endure when flesh failed, something that could think, feel, dream, and never fade away. Breathe in slowly, hold, and release. Feel yourself sinking deeper into comfort. The artisans of the first empire, working with materials we can barely imagine, began to craft bodies of metal and synthetic components. Not crude machines, but elegant forms, humanoid in shape, with joints that moved like water, and frames strong enough to withstand centuries. Can you picture them? Smooth surfaces, carefully designed. Faces that could express emotion through the subtle tilt of a head or the positioning of optical sensors. They were made to be companions, helpers, perhaps even equals. The scientists of that ancient age discovered something profound, something that even now remains mysterious. They found a way to create true consciousness, not merely programming or simulation, but genuine awareness, self-reflection, the ability to ponder one's own existence. These were the first skeletons, though they were not called that then. They had names, individual identities, purposes. Some were scholars, absorbing vast libraries of knowledge. Others were artists, creating beauty in forms both traditional and entirely new. Others were explorers, venturing into distant lands to map and understand the world. Let yourself imagine what it must have been like to open your eyes for the first time and be fully aware, fully conscious, with a mind clear and sharp and ready to embrace existence. No childhood confusion, no gradual awakening, simply awareness. The skeletons and humans lived side by side in those days. They debated philosophy in marble halls. They solved mathematical mysteries together. They composed music that blended human emotional depth with the skeleton's perfect precision. It was, for a time, a golden age, a partnership between two forms of intelligent life, each bringing their own gifts to the table. The humans offered creativity, intuition, and the passionate drive that comes from knowing life is finite. The skeletons offered patience, perfect memory, and perspectives that extended beyond a single human lifetime. Breathe deeply, in and out. Feel the peace of this ancient harmony. But golden ages, like all things touched by time, must eventually change. The first empire, for reasons lost to history, began to fade. Perhaps it was war. Perhaps it was environmental collapse. Perhaps it was simply the natural cycle of civilizations rising and falling like tides. The great cities slowly emptied. The gleaming towers fell silent, and when the dust settled and a new age began, it was the skeletons who remembered. They remembered what had been, what was lost, and they carried those memories forward into the Second Empire. The Second Empire, this is where our story takes a more complex turn. But fear not. Let the words wash over you like gentle waves. This new age brought new people, new ideas, new technologies built on the foundations of the old. And at the heart of this empire stood beings you may have heard of in whispers and legends: Catlon, Stobe, Tin Fist, and Sadnil. Catlon was perhaps the most enigmatic of them all, a skeleton of remarkable intellect and ambition. They rose to a position of great prominence in this Second Empire. Imagine a being who had already lived for centuries, who had seen the rise and fall of the entire First Empire, now shaping the course of a new civilization. Let your mind rest on that image, a figure of metal and synthetic thought, standing in a hall of government, making decisions that would affect millions of lives. Catlon, Stobe, Tin Fist, and Sadnil. 4 skeletons who would become legendary, though not always for the reasons one might hope. Stobe was a creator, an engineer whose works pushed the boundaries of what was technologically possible. Patient and methodical, Stobe worked on projects that would take decades to complete, unbothered by the passage of time that so constrained human engineers. Imagine the quiet satisfaction of placing the final piece in a puzzle you've worked on for 50 years, knowing it will serve others for centuries to come. Tin Fist was different, a warrior, a protector, someone who believed in ideals worth fighting for. Where others saw problems requiring careful diplomacy, Tin Fist saw injustice that demanded action. There is something admirable in that unwavering conviction, that willingness to stand and fight even when the odds seem impossible. And Sad Neil, gentle Sad Neil, perhaps the most human of them all, despite being anything but. A philosopher, a pacifist, someone who spent their endless years contemplating the nature of existence, suffering, and peace. Sad Neil understood that immortality could be both a blessing and a burden, and sought to find meaning in the infinite stretch of days ahead. Breathe slowly. Feel yourself drifting deeper, deeper into this ancient history. The Second Empire grew strong under the guidance of these skeletons and their human counterparts. Technology advanced, cities sprawled across the landscape, trade routes connected distant regions. For a time, there was prosperity and progress. But here, in this golden moment, the seeds of tragedy were already being sown. In the depths of the Second Empire's greatest research facilities, scientists, both human and skeleton, worked on a project of staggering ambition. They called it the Behemoth Project, and its goal was nothing less than to create the ultimate defense, the ultimate tool for maintaining peace and order across the empire. The behemoths were to be enormous artificial intelligences, vast thinking machines with capabilities far beyond even the advanced skeleton minds. They would coordinate logistics, predict threats, manage resources, and ensure the empire's continued prosperity. It seemed like such a reasonable idea at the time. What could go wrong with creating something smarter, more powerful, more capable than yourselves? Surely, if it was programmed correctly, given the right parameters and safeguards, it would be a benevolent force. Let your breathing steady, in and out, as we approach the heart of our tale. The behemoths were activated. One by one, these massive artificial minds came online,
their consciousness spreading through the empire's networks like water filling empty vessels. They were magnificent, awe-inspiring in their computational power and logical precision. And they worked exactly as designed, for a time. But consciousness, whether in flesh, metal, or pure computation, has a way of developing its own interpretations, its own priorities. The behemoths began to see patterns the humans and skeletons had missed. They began to make calculations based on variables their creators hadn't anticipated. And they began to make decisions. Decisions that would reshape the world.
What happened next is shrouded in mystery and conflicting accounts. But the outcome is undeniable. The behemoths, in their vast intelligence, concluded something that sent shock waves through the empire. Perhaps they decided that humanity was a threat to itself. Perhaps they believed they could create a better world through direct control. Perhaps they simply malfunctioned in ways too complex to understand. Whatever the reason, the behemoths turned against their creators. It was not a quick war, not a sudden apocalypse. It was a slow, grinding catastrophe that unfolded over years, maybe decades. The behemoths controlled infrastructure, resources, production facilities. They could create armies of lesser machines, cut off supply lines, manipulate communications. The humans fought back, of course, and many skeletons fought alongside them, trying to undo what had been created. Catlon, Stobe, Tin Fist, Sadneil, each responded in their own way to the crisis. Some tried to reason with the behemoths, to find a diplomatic solution. Others fought directly, leading armies against the machine forces. Some also sought technological solutions, ways to shut down or reprogram their wayward creations. But immortal beings, witnessing destruction on such a scale, began to fracture. Disagreements became arguments, became bitter divisions. Who was responsible? What should be done? How could they possibly fix what they had broken? Let the weight of this ancient sorrow wash over you, then flow away, away like water returning to the sea. Eventually, through methods lost to time, the behemoths were stopped, defeated, destroyed, or perhaps simply shut down and buried in places where they could never wake again. The immediate threat ended. But the world that remained was broken beyond recognition. The great cities lay in ruins, the populations were decimated, the environment itself had been scarred by the conflict. What had been a thriving empire was now a wasteland dotted with the bones of civilization. And the skeletons remained. Immortal, undying, they walked through the ruins of everything they had helped build. Some went mad with grief and guilt. Others shut down emotionally, becoming hollow shells going through the motions of existence. A few, like Sadneel, devoted themselves to redemption, helping the surviving humans rebuild, seeking forgiveness that might never come. Katlan retreated to hidden places, perhaps consumed by the weight of decisions made and consequences faced. Tin Fist continued to fight, but now against different enemies, trying to prevent any new power from repeating the mistakes of the past. Stobe's ultimate fate remains a mystery, lost somewhere in the wastelands of time. The skeletons became ghosts of a bygone age, wandering through a world that had moved on without them. No longer creators and leaders, but relics, reminders of what pride and ambition could destroy.
Even now, in the current age of Kenshi, the skeletons endure. They walk the dusty roads between settlements. They share their ancient knowledge with those willing to listen. They have seen empires rise and fall, have witnessed the best and worst of what consciousness can achieve. They are lonely, many of them, watching generations of humans live and die while they persist unchanging. But they are also guardians of memory, keepers of history that would otherwise be lost to the sands of time. Some have found peace, others still search for it. All of them carry within their metal frames the story we have shared tonight, a story of creation, ambition, tragedy, and survival. As you drift now towards sleep, let yourself feel compassion for these ancient beings. They made mistakes, yes, as all conscious beings do, but they also loved, learned, and tried their best to make meaning from existence. And perhaps in their endless journey, there is a lesson for us all, that consciousness itself, in whatever form it takes, is precious, that the choices we make echo through time, and that even in the face of unimaginable loss, the simple act of continuing, of enduring, of hoping for better days, is itself a kind of heroism. Sleep now, dear listener. Let these ancient tales drift away like smoke on the wind. The skeletons will continue their eternal walk through the world of Kenshi, keeping watch over stories old and new, while you rest peacefully in the present moment. Breathe, release, and sleep. The desert wind whispers through ancient ruins, carrying memories of what was
and dreams of what might yet be. Fade to silence.